Well, for the last couple of years in office, Governor Little has prided himself on declaring Idaho the least regulated state in the union. To claim that, he's had to cut a lot of red tape, a lot of unnecessary parts of Idaho Code. Well, Idaho's Military Division believes it is helping with that, with House Bill 475. And in simplest terms, it's been labeled as a bill that would allow for militias in Idaho, which are currently illegal. So is it slashing red tape or opening the door for dangerous militias and armed demonstrations? They want to remove language in Idaho Code that keeps groups outside of Idaho's National Guard from forming a private militia or parading as a militia in public with firearms in any city or town in Idaho. Some argue the current law ignores First and Second Amendment rights. Others argue it protects Idahoans from dangerous displays and actions from private militias who have no accountability. Well, Joe Paris brings us the debate from the House Transportation and Defense Committee.
A House panel heard testimony Wednesday on removing an entire section of Idaho Code that has to do with militias in military parades. Under current Idaho Code, it's illegal for a body of men to associate together as a military company or organization or parade in public with firearms in any city or town in this state unless they're called into service of the state. House Bill 475 would remove that section of code from law. Major Steve Stokes with the Idaho Military Division presented the bill, saying it's about cutting back on regulations per Governor Little's request.
IMD submitted proposals in previous years to eliminate outdated and unnecessary statutes. The IMD identified Section 46802 as unnecessary for its operations and proposed to the governor's office and DFM that the section be repealed.
Major Stokes explained to the House committee that the current language in the law is outdated. He points out another issue, too, enforcing it.
The statute does not have a defined enforcement mechanism. There is no assignment of criminal liability attached, so no law enforcement can enforce the provision.
Critics of the bill testified that removing the Idaho Code could come with negative and dangerous impacts.
I can think of no time in our nation's history where this law is more needed than today. Bearing in mind the recent anniversary of the January 6th insurrection, as well as the Rittenhouse trial, why would we want to give the green light to vigilantism, lawlessness, and intimidation?
I feel that repealing this law at this time without a replacement in place would be bad form.
In testimony, concerns like those were addressed by Major Stokes, who says there are other parts of Idaho law that cover militias and concerns of terrorism. To be clear, Major Stokes says he's not advocating for or against militias. That's not his job. Rather, cutting red tape per the governor's request. Because the section of code in question is a part of Title 46, Militia and Military Affairs, Stokes argued that editing the law to add clarifying language could infringe on citizens' rights, something not under the purview of Title 46.
If the legislature determines that it needs to add a precise, clearly constitutional, and clearly enforceable provision that restricts the behavior of the general population, it should nest that provision where it needs to be in the criminal code, which is found in Title 18.
All citizen testimony was against the bill, and the House did pass the bill, though, to the full House on a 13-4 vote, with no recommendation to pass or not. Essentially, the committee passed the bill on to the full House for in-depth debate, with no recommendation on how they believe lawmakers should vote.
That's something that doesn't happen all that often, to pass it through with no recommendation. But we heard a lot of people from North Idaho today in that testimony.
Yeah, and they were referring to the year 2020, Brian, and if you may have forgotten, back in 2020, there was a rumor that went around the Coeur d'Alene area that there was going to be an Antifa rally or some type of looting in downtown Coeur d'Alene. And because of that, a lot of people showed up in the Coeur d'Alene area dressed in military gear with heavy weapons. Some people argued that they had weapons that were totally inappropriate to be walking around a downtown area with. There was concern, though, in the Coeur d'Alene area about organized militias that are private militias, of course, not part of state-sanctioned events, and they testified today saying we've had incidents here in the last few years that makes us nervous about having militias in our area. So they were concerned that by getting rid of the red tape, so to speak, would have unintended consequences, but it was explained to people that there are other areas of law in Idaho that really take on their concerns.
Yeah, because those people could just show up and say we're just people with guns, so we're not necessarily a militia. So it seems like it depends on that definition.
Some gray area and nuance there.
All right. Thank you, Joe.